But the crisis did acquire a British angle this week as David Cameron suddenly warned us that Iran is building missiles capable of hitting London. Where have we heard that before?
Look, there was strong evidence that the missiles could have been launched in 45 minutes if they had actually existed. And by the same token, Saddam Hussein's 50-foot laser-eyed robot dinosaurs could have stormed down Whitehall, vaporising the Houses of Parliament if they had actually been built. Thanks for listening. That'll be 50 grand.
The thing is, of course, that the rules of mutually assured destruction still apply. Iran knows very well if it attacks Tel Aviv, Tehran will be vaporised 2 minutes later. This equation persuaded Stalin, Khrushchev and Brezhnev from doing anything silly. Are we really saying that Ahmadinejad is madder than Stalin?
The craziest part, of course, is that Israel and Iran worship the same God. They pretty much agree about Jesus. Fundamentally, the world is in danger because they can't agree on which is the best book on the subject. The biggest flashpoint in geopolitics boils down to this.
I like the Talmud, I like the Quran, but which is best? There's only one way to find out. Kill everyone. 30 years ago, things were about to happen that no penguin should ever have to see. Here to wave the flag is Lloyd Langford.
I want to talk today about the Falkland Islands. Or if you're listening from Argentina, the Falkland Islands. I'm keen to explore why this archipelago, nearly 8,000 miles away, continues to be such an emotive topic, especially when no one in mainland Britain really gives a toss about the Isle of Wight. I'll be totally honest with you. My initial reaction to the Falklands problem is I'm more than happy for Argentina to have them. I feel no real connection to this cluster of islands. Mainly inhabited by sheep, penguins and landmines, I look at it like a dull, though occasionally exciting, zoo. I guess to me, the Falklands conflict is a bit like Kajagoogoo. Massive in the 80s, but something I've never really understood. Like Kajagoogoo, people are very reluctant to see a revival. Contemporary British deployment of a new Royal Navy warship and Prince William's recent arrival on the islands has angered many Argentinians who see this as a provocative act of militarisation. William is said to be there on a routine tour of duty and must be slightly upset that he's travelled all the way from Anglesey to find himself halfway across the world and still on a sparsely populated island full of sheep and rocks. And of course, Maradona has proven that the country is no stranger to heavy-handed intervention. On the 28th of February, amid increasing tension, 2 British cruise ships were turned away from an Argentinian port. That said, I'm not sure if that's anything to do with the Falklands, or more likely an understandable suspicion about the safety of cruise travel. Thanks to the Costa Company, in the early part of 2012, travelling by cruise ship is as reckless a mode of travel as accepting a lift off George Michael. So at present, we have this tit-for-tat situation where David Cameron and Argentine President de Kirchner are like 2 athletics at a limbo competition, neither of them willing or able to back down. The situation, like a man on an electronic moving staircase at the Imperial War Museum, may be slowly escalating towards conflict. Into this already volatile situation, you have the added problem of a whole host of celebrities chipping in with their opinions. Both perennial bell-end Morrissey of the Smiths and Pink Floyd's Roger Waters have recently made vocal assertions that the islands should be handed back to Argentina. It makes you wonder which other 80s pop stars are going to start mouthing off about current events. I'd quite like to hear how New Kids on the Block think Kim Jong-un is settling in. Does Carol Decker think China is getting out of hand? For every argument, there is a counter-argument, and I think it's worth examining some of the current sticking points.
The islanders themselves wish to remain British.
This is true. David Cameron maintains that the UK will not discuss sovereignty as long as this remains the case. But I guess the islanders wish to remain British because we put them there. And personally, I find it quite difficult to feel empathy with the people who have an annual Margaret Thatcher Day. That's right, they have an annual Margaret Thatcher Day. Every year, on January the 10th, Falkland Islanders honour our former Prime Minister by repeatedly stealing each other's milk and then setting fire to a massive wicker Arthur Scargill. I guess the sheer bloody mindedness of the islanders rubs me up too, stubbornly clinging on to a desolate, windswept rock in the middle of the Atlantic, the only entertainment being the occasional fat penguin treading on a landmine. Mainland Britain has plenty of crap places to live. I'm not sure it's worth the hassle.
They're closer to Argentina. The Argentinians should have them.
If only all international claims to territory could be settled by mere geographical proximity. It doesn't really work that you own something if it's quite near to you. And to prove this, I'd like to introduce Exhibit A, Island. Also, the Falklands are about 300 miles away from mainland South America. That's quite a trek, unless you're a proclaimer.
We were there first.
Both sides claim that they were there first and so should have rightful first dibs on the land. I'm afraid it doesn't work like that. Just ask any Native American. It's useful to think of the islands as the prime sun lounger next door to the massive swimming pool of the Atlantic. Most of Europe has had its towel down on it at one point or another. And since 1833, the British have inhabited and administered the islands. I think the bottom line is that this is always going to be a tricky subject to discuss. Everyone's got an opinion, even people who've never been featured in smash hits. But if they do want a quick way of deciding it, I reckon both David Cameron and President de Kirchner should compete against each other on the total wipeout course. It's not the fairest way of deciding it, but I think it'll unite both the Brits and the Argentinians to see Cameron getting repeatedly punched in the stomach by a wall of mechanical boxing gloves. I've been Lloyd Langford. Thank you and good night.